All right, I think we have a fairly good amount of people in the room. Hello, everybody. Great to see you all here in Pasadena. I hope it will fill up a little bit more later on. Just wanted to welcome you and give you some, explanation why we're doing this, right? Just about a year ago, actually at MTS, we had an AI panel and we discussed, what more we could do in terms of furthering AI for standards. And I'm going to events and seeing a lot of sessions about AI, and there's very little discussion about interoperability issues. And that's really what SMPTE is about. SMPTE at the core is a standards developing organization. So we're interested in the interoperability issues. And so we said, let's do an event. We have a kind of a storyline here. So we're going to start with a keynote. We're then going to go into use cases, applications. I wasn't even really aware what's behind me on the screen. Anyway, we go into use cases, applications, and then we dive a little bit into what's real. We really want to look at what's real in AI and not any great experiments, right? And then we talk a little bit about technology, what's happening at the moment, what's coming in the future. Then we have lunch, and after lunch, we're going to pick up and then really start with the interoperability discussion. We have two speakers to talk about the intersection of standards and policy, because I think that's a topic which is very little talked about. And then after that, we have a great session with great speakers about interoperability issues in AI. So I think that will be really interesting. And then we want to do an unconference session, kind of a brainstorm session, talk about, what have you seen over the day? What do you think are the great challenges for AI in media? And that really kind of concludes the day. And I hope that's, we're successful with looking then at what can SMPTE do in the next 12 months, 24 months in terms of interoperability in AI. We already have projects we have 3 AI projects. We have an AI task force, but we really want to become a center of standards development for AI. With that said, we change things a little bit. So we're not taking questions for the presentations over Poll Everywhere for this day. What we did instead, we have an overarching question about what you think the challenges are in AI. So if you scan that barcode, you can submit an answer to that question. And then at the end of the day, in the unconference session, we can look at what was submitted, and then we can discuss that and talk about that. We thought that would be a good way. So over the day, while you're going through the sessions, I will remind you to, but go to that Poll Everywhere setup and submit your challenges, what you see as a challenge. All right, so next is the unconferencing, is the keynote. Hold on. So I want to introduce our one and only Rich. He is the president of SMPTE. Over 25 years in media technology, in the media tech industry, working at industry giants such as Technicolor, Deluxe, and Dolby. Previously, he was the founder and CEO of Sundoc, which you probably know, where he first started developing AI tools for production and post. Rich is now chairman and co-founder of Volustore, developing AI for volumetric media. And he is joined by Muki Kulhan, on the other side here, and really impressive bio. Multi award-winning, BAFTA-nominated Chief Innovation Officer, Executive Producer, and Creative Technologist at Muki International. Has produced emerging media and AI R&D across music and sports giants like BBC, MTV, Paramount, Red Bull, and more. Co-founder and CITO at her own startup, Original Version, licensing authentic digital talent assets, currently leading the IBC Accelerator's Media Innovation R&D program, UK ambassador for WIIT, Women in Immersive Technologies, Europe, supporting equality and inclusion for females and allies in the tech. So I think great speakers, have at it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Rich.
Hey,
How
hey.
you doing? We're going to hug.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Day 4 of SMT. Is everyone okay?
You're
Right.
still awake, alive, just about. So,
Rich and I, had a lot of discussions about this session, knowing how important it is to, set up the day and, really kind of lead this discussion with the other speakers and the other sessions that are happening. And, the topic of, that you see in the description around policies and standards, institutions. We're going to make several callbacks to this because we know that this is a really important way to kind of outline, what this chat's going to be about. And really, it's not, we're not here to solve any problems. We're here to kind of ask a lot of these questions, and the industry is in flux. We feel like every time we make a turn down one of these roads, we have to quickly pivot and do a U-turn and possibly, switch things up and go to the next, the next road. So, where things are going right now, kind of bubble versus reality, isn't it? Yeah.
So, clickety click. So it needs to be, that's what.
What?
Need to be closer to there to click, apparently. Obviously, as you know, AI can do everything. We don't have anything to talk about for the rest of today. But of course, that's not true, right? So we're here to kind of burst that bubble a little bit and look at what the real challenges are. But again, we're not going to answer any questions. That's what today is all about, is exploring the questions that we have and looking at our place in this as an industry and, of course, as SMPTE. I'm sure you've seen a lot of these headlines, and they're somewhat clickbaity, and they like to provoke, an uneducated audience into kind of worrying about AI a little bit. But of course, we all know it's not that simple.
But those headlines are real. Those are real things.
Yeah, no, I didn't make those up. Those are things we just grabbed yesterday.
It is not, there's not fake news. Those are real news. But, why is this important? Why are we talking about this now? Because we know that this is really genuinely confronting some of the questions that we have in the industry around things that, we're not able to ignore. How is this going to affect businesses, jobs, production workflows, technical workflows from the creative side, frameworks, and everything in between, and even covering, energy, ethics, automation, imagination, and more as we kind of think about what age we're in. Is it the agentic age, or, where things are right now?
Yeah, so we thought we'd just kind of look at this in terms of the industrial revolutions, and hopefully you're all familiar with them around, the original mechanized.
Beautiful slide,
revolution. Thank you. You might have noticed I used AI for this, of course.
We spent 3 hours on this slide.
Yeah, so we're not going to go over all of this, but of course, if Industrial Revolution 4 was around automation and efficiency, Industrial Revolution 5 is around the collaboration of humans and machines, and we're not really fully in what you would call Industrial Revolution 5 yet, because that's quite broad, and it also brings into play things like quantum computing, biomechanics, and so on. So it's not just about AI, but it is about the human AI interface. And in principle, Industrial Revolution 5.0 is about improving the ethical and sustainable and societal challenges that we face today, globally, and using AI to kind of address those. So it goes much, much deeper than, simply, automation and efficiency for jobs, or in our case, workflows. But we have to be conscious that right now we're kind of going slightly the other way in terms of ethics and AI. And it poses a real societal challenge, and one that we hope will be looking at more in depth today.
So kind of looking at the state of the industry, I think one slide back was just like a little bit of a holding, and you're good. I think, did we miss it? Yeah, the 5.0, the state of the end. Anyway, I think we're looking at where it's affecting the full ecosystem, and looking at from the creative and the production distribution, what that means. And so we thought long and hard about it, and so we decided to look at our Kulhan Welsh AI reality cycle, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm not sure if it's going to become as famous as the actual Gartner hype cycle, but you never know. You might buy into this more by the end. So yeah, we were looking at how AI is used at the moment, and effectively it's changing so rapidly. I mean, we didn't even write this presentation till this morning because, if we'd done it yesterday, we'd be out of date.
The date.
Anyway. Yeah, completely.
Bad news.
Fake news. Yeah, exactly. So as capabilities increase, usage increases very rapidly of new tools and new capabilities, but then disillusionment does seem to set in, and people start to go back to back to the kind of old way of doing things. And we've seen that already with companies that have laid off huge amounts of their workforce to use AI instead, and then suddenly found that it was a bad mistake.
Right.
And then they get back to in real life.
Exactly. So we see this time and time again within, technology infrastructures and within, consumer facing production, and where things are with it always coming back to in real life and always coming back to, what that means,
Humans in the loop.
Humans in the loop. So kind of referencing again that kind of industrial revolution of bringing it back to the human centric approach. And then here we have the state of the industry. So MEGS, as we know, is media, entertainment, gaming, and sports, and, kind of the crux of broadcasting and the crux of where we are kind of doing the research and development across the ecosystem, looking at that full end to end and what that really means, through that whole supply chain of production and distribution, and where we are, with things. So we kind of were thinking really hard about what's a great example of a big production that can really represent modern day end to end around that cycle that keeps going back to real life. And, racking our brains, very highly intellectual conversations came back to this guy. So hands up.
Yeah. Hands up if you do know who Mr. Beast is.
Okay, that's a good percentage.
You owe me a bit.
I owe you a pint.
You do owe me a pint. I told you.
I was betting. I wasn't sure how many people would actually.
Of course. So if you don't know, Mr. Beast is a social media star who is now basically just another media star, doing huge productions, tens of millions production value on, Amazon and Netflix and so on. Well, Amazon's a big one, but this is really interesting cycle because previously, content creators, and we know the content creator economy is super important now. It's becoming a really big part of consumer media. Content creators had the tools in their hands to effectively create, videos, audio and pictures, and then they would use authenticity to get an audience. So they talk about some subject that really spoke to an audience. But then what differentiated them was production value. And what we've seen with Mr. Beast is effectively gone from, creating like YouTube on a mobile phone all the way up to doing a huge show on Amazon. But what's happening now, and that was okay. But of course, to differentiate yourself with quality of content, you're just using Hollywood techniques, and big media broadcast techniques. What we can now do with generative AI is actually put in the hands of any filmmaker, any content maker, the ability to create anything and make it look real and at Hollywood level kind of, production quality.
Yeah. And another example for the Beast is bringing it back to real life again. So it's a good, that representation of modern day production, utilizing tools, but adapting really, really quickly. Also for the end user, for the audience, really, really, really soaking everything up there too. But we do know the exponential rate of change. This visual, I think you could probably explain it a bit better, but what this is representing is, the rate of change is increasing so rapidly, trying to keep up and, not that computers are doing the thinking for us, but we're trying to still dominate, right?
Yeah. And it's really hard with the rate of change of technology, particularly with AI now, for institutions, governments and legislature to keep up. And in fact, there's other questions around that. I think one of the concerns is, not so much about the computers doing the thinking for us and taking our jobs. I mean, obviously on face value, that is a concern that is expressed, but I don't think anyone in this room is suddenly worried that your jobs are going to be taken by AI. You're probably all working to make AI. So, I mean, that's a good start, but there are environmental concerns, obviously, with the quantity of compute that's required. There are economic concerns about, are we making enough money to pay for this technology? And, the amount spent at the moment on large language model development is 10 times the amount actually brought in revenue. And we're talking from, tens of billions to hundreds of billions of dollars a year. and it's, the differential. So it's a pretty interesting problem. And then obviously we have technical stability, particularly with, very large models requiring huge amounts of data. A lot of that is collected from the internet, and the internet is now becoming polluted because there's generative data going back in, and that's polluting the models. So getting ethically sourced data is becoming a really, really big challenge, and good quality data. So these are big questions for the industry, and that stability is then pushing institutions to think about how they make more money out of it, and that in of itself may not be a good thing.
Exactly. So aside from that little triage of, environmental and financial and, everything that's going with that, we wanted to touch on, again, what's, in this forum today will be, a little bit more of a deeper dive of what's real and what's not. And so we're finding, again, with the rate of change of production and the two folks that are not in our bubble, an average audience member is now really not even checking what's real or not. And, that comes down to, the areas around protection, detection, things that C2PA are doing, EIDR are doing, with Volley Store original version, and things that we're looking to do to protect the content that we're making, to protect the audience, and really start to think about where do those frameworks for policy and standards come into play to help craft and guide, governments and policy of saying what's real and what's not real. And, starting to think about if the government, if a government won't work to protect this, then it's up to us really here in this room, and beyond to start to create those to help influences. So we wanted to show this loop of Sora. Yeah, Sora 2 this just came out 2 days ago.
It's a week.
It was a week. Oh, right. Fine. 7 days. Sue me. So do I owe you another point for that one? Yeah.
Sora 3 already. I probably missed that. I guess there is.
Yeah. But I mean, the point of this looped again and real is to really put a lot more pressure on ourselves to think about protection, detection, and where the distribution is going to be, spotted a lot easier to keep what we work on super safe.
Yeah. So that's enough of that.
Yeah, I mean, and
about the IBC accelerators.
So one of these things, we wanted to put this slide in because it just kind of shows proof of the global demand in our industry, across the board of global broadcasters, such as like Globo, Rai, BBC, ITV, TV2, Wiley, EBU, and then vendors such as, Chiron, AMD, Google. Everyone's been banding together across so many of these R&D projects and really putting ethics and responsibility first, whether that's agentic AI agents in a live production, to frameworks around creative movie making, to, hyper personalization in live sports. And these groups are really thinking around, where does copyright come into play? Training the data sets responsibly. Where compensation credit come in, especially when we're thinking around, original talent and humans. Again, kind of protecting the humans again. And where content policy comes into play, and where do our creative freedoms, where are those limitations kind of guided around in risk and policy. Huge concerns around fake and malicious intent. We all know that there's still huge concerns around data bias. A great example of that on one of the projects, they were doing ancient Rome as a theme, typed in female gladiator, and up came a very scantily clad Laura Croft type of figure, that was like assuming that was what the group was after. And it was some guys called out, that's super sexist. We can't use that in this R&D. But again, just kind of looping back around sustainability and where the energy comes into play. We know that, for example, we worked so closely, really, really closely with Google and the credits that they were providing for us, and AMD and HP, and using the hardware that was specifically created around GPUs, CPU, NPUs, that was built to save power. And then last but not least, like really looking at the impact that it has on us as humans, as people, and in society, and where these concerns come into play. So that QR code goes to one of the projects, but there's lots more to kind of sink your teeth into here too. And there's a couple accelerator people in the room that can come and have a chat with you. Yeah, but I think like it's talking about our priorities. So we came up with another cycle.
Our other cycle.
Yes.
Trust cycle.
These are the photo opportunities, people. You can't go wrong.
So effectively, we're looking at how we trust content and why, or how we develop the tools to allow people to trust content. So if we think about in terms of real life capture, so something that is authentic and true, how do we protect that? And then by protecting it, how do we allow the audience to verify that something's authentic and not, generative and fake, or even just modified, obviously, simply by editing content? And, we have these challenges. And this speaks to things like IDA and C2PA, content protection protocols. And these are things hopefully, we're going to get more deeply into today. So, think about this. It's really important because the last part of that cycle is trust. And without having these mechanisms, which, we have the frameworks for today, but I don't think governments are going to really force this. I think we as an industry are responsible for making sure that we are the ones who put these protections in place so audiences can trust content, because otherwise we kind of don't need the in real life capture anymore, because if nobody trusts content, you just fake everything.
Yeah.
So,
and that goes back to authentication. And we're seeing, not only technology change within camera systems, such as like Sony creating a new camera that, puts in the C2PA content stamping at the point of capture and capturing those data sets like per movement and per eyeball and things that are happening in a studio and in real life. But we wanted to make this a circle, and not to make it a vicious circle, but to keep a virtuous circle is what we want. That's it. Yeah. So now what, Rich?
Well, it's the future, I guess.
Let's go.
Yeah. So look, we have both opportunity and responsibility here. We are, as an industry, capturing a huge amount of the real world right now. And we face, a great opportunities with AI to improve, what we can deliver to audiences and the experience. But we're also holding our hands huge amounts of data. We're already capturing the world in not only 2D, but 3D through volumetric capture and now increasingly in 4D, which means we can reproduce, humans and animals and objects and, race cars and things in incredibly realistic detail, but we can do so generatively because of what we're capturing in the real world. And this, as an industry, we're sitting on a huge amount of data, and actually we're custodians of that. And I think we need to be thinking about that responsibility and how we deal with that content and make it not only fit for purpose, but something that, again, is trusted, and used responsibly.
Exactly. And this also applies to environments and world builds. And we talked really kind of in depth around that, of what that means, on location, and what that, how does that change your production if you are working remotely, and
rights as well is a huge issue in here. It's not just the rights of, say, an athlete or an actor or, a musician who might be captured, and now can be reproduced in great detail, and realism. But even like if you scan a landscape, who owns the rights to the castle that was in the landscape? And it's a very complex area, and one that we need to, increase our kind of, understanding of. And also, when it comes to things like authentication, how do we embed authentication into these volumetric spaces? It's going to become increasingly important, especially with immersive technologies.
And right. And so there's kind of, the number one word that keeps coming into play all over the world, wherever we are, is collaboration. And we love this image too. This one, we spent about an hour on this one too.
Well,
what is the right image?
Took my brain out.
Exactly. Human machine and collaboration, where we are talking about, where these opportunities lie around upskilling, around efficiency, where, again, looping into our responsibility, putting that policy and standards into play, and, how that does affect, the security and, ethics and the attributions, and putting those things into play in the right kind of guidance.
I think, our workforces are going to be dealing with AI, so we have no choice but to upskill them and teach them about this. Otherwise, they're either going to get left behind, or they're going to be using tools and they're not educated as to what those tools can do and what that means for them in their day-to-day jobs. So it's really important that we think about how we upskill our workforce and teach them, and generally about the public. Education around AI is not good at the moment. No. Again, we have responsibility there because we're using it so much, and so much of the content consumed by the public is coming from us as an industry. And so, we have the opportunity to educate them.
Yeah. So our closing words of inspiration, we love Fei-Fei Li. We love Dr.
Yes.
Fei-Fei Li. And this is like,
Actually,
we could do a whole 3 hours.
You know who Fei-Fei Li is? Anyone?
Oh, wow. You owe me a pint,
right.
dude.
So she's known as the godmother of AI. If you don't know who she is, you should go watch some TED Talks.
Incredible. Yeah.
Research her. She is an incredible mind, and she has shaped much of what we experience today as AI, and probably one of the most important people in the world in terms of what she thinks and what she says is super important. And one thing that she's been talking about recently is the fact that large language models are very limited. They're representation of the world around us. They are not the world around us. The next big push in AI is going to be around spatial intelligence and world building. And this is where we go to immersive environments. And it's going to be super important that we understand everything around the world, physics, spatial, like movement, spatial experience, because at some point, once this is a capability that AI has, it will be very difficult for us to distinguish the real from the imagined and the generative. And at that point, if we have not got the frameworks in place to distinguish what is real and what's generated, and we as an industry haven't taken that responsibility seriously, it may well be too late.
Going back to the circle of truth, the circle of virtue. So, I live it, Rich lives it, everyone in this room is living it. We know that this is an industry that is adapting quickly, doing our very, very best to evolve with how we, produce, how your workflows, infrastructure, architecture, how that end output is, then translated into the consumer and the fan. To avoid extinction and really
don't end up like the dodo.
Do not end up like the robot dodo, although we wanted to keep one in that had 4 legs.
I kind of want one of those robot dodos.
I think we should have that as our logo for our next talk, right?
Popped out of the AI that we were using.
Yeah.
I was like, I quite like that.
So to avoid the extinction, this is up to us. And we wanted just to reiterate that again, back to the 5.0, industry 5.0 around, the human machine connectivity. And
so
you're here.
This is us. We're here. And we need to take this responsibility seriously. So hopefully today will be one of the first steps we take as an industry to move towards better standardization and more responsible, ethical AI.
One day more, Rich.
One day more.
One day more.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.